I think living a good life is again, it's not about having the biggest toys. It's about finding that the purpose of why you're put here, and not being a chicken shit in terms of like trying to step out and reach your potential as a human being, not hiding. Sometimes putting yourself out there is terrifying, but you know, again, I can't ask these little people or these other people to, go out and grab life with both hands if I'm not doing it myself. I can't.
Hey there, welcome back to Good for the Hive, the weekly podcast where I speak to some inspiring individuals to share their life lessons and take a look at the question, what is a good life? This week's guest is Deborah Menderin. Deborah is a fourth generation psychic, a certified astrologer, and a cancer survivor. This is not your everyday conversation. We talk all about what Deborah thinks is going on behind the scenes of the universe, how her and her family receive their messages and what it's even like to receive a psychic message, and how her and her family use tools such as tarot cards, tea leaves, even a regular deck of playing cards as tools to get into their readings. Now, this isn't necessarily my cup of tea leaves, but Deborah speaks so passionately about her world and what she believes in, it's really hard not to suspend disbelief and go along with the journey. If you enjoy the episode, please do give it a like, and if you're new around here, do subscribe. The more likes and subs that we get on the channel help us to grow and continue to attract inspiring individuals to share their life lessons with you. If nothing else, you'll learn that when you're experimenting with virtual backgrounds, it's best not to wear a white t-shirt and have a white background. Let's jump into the episode. Deborah Menderin, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Pleasure.
So we'll start this podcast where I start all of my episodes and ask you, what is a good life to you?
Oh, that's a big one. So for me personally, it would be about having a life with meaning. So finding some type of meaning in the day-to-day and the running around and up and down the stairs or what have you, and the accumulation of the things that we kind of need in order to be these physical creatures. So finding some type of purpose, direction, or meaning within all of that. And for everybody, that's going to be completely different. So what is, something wonderful for one person may not be super great for me, but I guess I've got two little eyes on me. And so that's my meaning, that's my purpose. And since they've come into my world, it's really helped me focus and sort of broadened, what I would choose in terms of experiences or just getting out there and trying to find depth of purpose, depth of direction, making sure that it's right for me. Because I guess in terms of dealing with children, and I've just let straight into the children thing, but in terms of dealing with children, we can't teach them how to be the best versions of themselves without being that ourselves, or at least trying to emulate that to a certain degree. So that's what I would make a good life, is if you can find that sweet spot of, this means something, I've got a purpose, I've got a reason to jump out of bed in the morning. Yeah.
So is your meaning at the moment being the best role model that you can be?
The best role model that I could be. Yeah, absolutely. And that's, I guess it's across the board. It's trying to be authentic in terms of like living, instead of just, like talking the talk. I want to walk the walk as well, right? So I want it to be authentic and be truthful and honest. So yeah, that's my journey.
And before you had these two little eyes on you, what was your meaning before that? Did you have a different stage of your life where you actually defined yourself by a different meaning at that point?
I think it's to really, my grandmother would always say to me, grab life with both hands and run with it, and to really value life, to make the most of it, to say yes. Obviously it has to be right, and these things have to be right for all of us, but to say yes, or to show up, or I always say, in terms like when I'm doing readings with people, with my clients, I just ask them to show up. They just got to meet me halfway, like, be present. And that's was my meaning, I guess, was to be authentic and live life and try not to waste moments, because we never know, like, it's never really truly promised to us, tomorrow or what have you. So try and make the most of today.
Even with an Aussie grandmother, I thought she'd say grab life by the balls. I thought it would be maybe it's a generational thing that
quite possibly, definitely not that grandmother, but yeah, this one would. When I'm a grandma, I will. So, can take the girl out of Brisbane, but can't take Brisbane out of the girl.
So let's go back to early life. And
Yes.
in your summary, we've described you as a 4th generation psychic. When did you first realize that you had gifts that were different to other people?
Because in my household, it was a regular thing. It wasn't really until my teens that I kind of realized that, oh, maybe this isn't what everybody's experience is. So when I was young, seeing things, or I used to wait when I was very, very little, like my earliest memory was waiting for the lights to come. So these lights would kind of fall from the ceiling and they were so peaceful and calming. And I would wait for them every night. So in one sense, it was that's when I knew that this was like my connection with spirit. But in the other sense, it wasn't until I was like much later, much older, that I realized that maybe a lot of people don't get to have that experience, or at least don't get to talk about it, or maybe understand it or clarify it a little bit more. Yeah, but it's always been with me. It's always been a part of me. So it's never really been separate from, so maybe from when I came into the world, it's been there. I don't know.
Okay, so we'll go into your gifts a little bit deeper a little bit later on. But talk to me about your grandmother, your great grandmother. How did their gifts express themselves? Were they psychics and that's how they earned a living, or they just pass things down through generations that these are the sort of things that I can see, hear, feel?
So, great grandmother and grandmother, it was more I can see, feel, hear. They would do things like read tea leaves or read playing cards. Great grandmother was more reading the playing cards, but it wasn't done in a professional manner. And my grandmother also, she would look at tea leaves, and my mum and her would sit around and kind of look into the cup and see everything. And then my mother became a professional medium and psychic and tarot reader. So that was my experience of being in my household, was having my mum having clients come in and out, and we used to sit and I used to play with her tarot cards. And so going further back, it was more like a building up to what it is now, and then hopefully what will be passed on in the future. But yeah, there was always sort of talk of being able to see or connect with, or having people who crossed over, passed over, coming through or making an appearance in the households from generations back. So
And one of your twins, one or both of them girls?
Yes, both girls.
So do you have sisters, and did your mum have sisters, and did it skip anyone?
My mum had a brother, and he became a policeman, and so it was maybe not his gig. So we've got a policeman and a psychic in the same family. My daughters, both, my mum and I, we would always talk about the knowing. So my mum said to me one day, she said, oh, they've got the knowing. That's the knowing. There it is. So that's kind of starting to grow and evolve. And I'm just watching it happen. But yeah, so it's just a lineage, I guess, to a certain degree, of being able to see or connect with or see beyond what is immediately apparent.
Okay.
And seeing things like, or my mum, like she would, place like an extra, set of knives and forks at the table, and she wouldn't know why, and then somebody would arrive unexpectedly. So there was always this kind of thing of that's a normal situation. So you sort of just test it and see if it works. Yeah.
And talk me through, so yeah, I kind of want to dive into a little bit about exactly how this works, because this is all pretty much new to me. From reading about you and some of the snippets and some of the sort of exposure you've had in the past, it sounds like you almost had to harness something. So things were happening around you and you couldn't put it into words and you couldn't explain it, and it was a little bit more frantic. And it sounds like at a certain age, you were able to harness it, and you knew what was going on, and you were able to control the inputs and outputs. How did that work through?
It takes a lot of practice. It takes a lot of humility. It takes a lot of patience. It's almost like learning how to drive a vehicle, like learning how to drive a car. So you've got to, really work with yourself, and you've got to practice those skills so they become almost like a reflex. At first, when things started to really, again, kick in for me, so it was more around like my teen years, it was really started to amp up. There were some experiences that weren't super great. So where it was almost like spirit was just, it was just way too much, too fast. So I had to learn to ground myself as much as humanly possible. And that includes, and I always say this with people, if they want to connect with their spiritual side, it's really, really important that your body is well maintained and looked after, that you're exercising or eating properly or what have you, whatever it is, but just making sure that your physical vessel is as grounded as humanly possible. And it's not until you're able to kind of really be able to make that physical body nice and strong, you can't harness that properly, because it's almost like it will tip you. It's quite a strong, powerful thing. It's like, riding a bucking bronco. And spirit doesn't mess around either. So it's just, like if you're meant to have a certain experience or what have you, like it will, you're going to bloody well go through it. And so it's just slowing it all down, grounding, practice, listening, being open, and connecting with that love aspect that I can't explain it. It's just like when you're sitting in the presence of something. And again, people say, well, what are you talking about? What are you babbling on about? But when you feel it, it is awe-inspiring and humbling. And if you're like this little human shaking your fist at the sky, expecting them to, jump through hoops for you, it's just not going to work. So that was part of the harnessing as well. It wasn't so much spirit, it was myself, my own expectations, and allowing them to kind of work with me.
Do you think you ever had any opportunity to have any different career, or you just think you were born to do this? Was there a part of you that was like, no, I fancy doing something else?
Yes, I tried. I went off and I did modeling, and I was like, no, I'm going to be an actress, and all these different things. But no, it chose me. It chose me. So it just took me a while to wake up to that. And I'm really glad it did. Yeah, I'm really, really glad it did.
What age were you where you turned this into something that you could give back to people in a constructive way? Because like you say, in the early years, we'll skip all of that bit where you were learning your craft, as it were. What age were you when you got to a stage where you're like, I can actually harness something and make it a source of good, or make it bring something from this, and it's not just like frantic visions or feelings or hearing things?
I mean, I first started doing readings in my very, very, very late teens and early 20s, but I would have to say more mid-20s when I was ready to be able to kind of sit with a client and kind of work through everything. And so I'd say mid-20s. Yeah.
There's got to be quite a lot of responsibility that comes when you're dealing with someone's feelings. No matter what they've come to you for a reason. You almost have to be of a certain age to comprehend what you're about to tell them. Have you ever not told someone something because you either didn't know the way to express it, or you didn't think, you just couldn't tell that person that thing at that time?
It was learning how to deliver the message in a way, and it's still something you've got to deliver the message ethically, and taking that person's vulnerability into account, and taking the trust that it takes for somebody to sit in front of you. So that does take a while to kind of, be able to sort of deliver the message properly. I have at times when in my much, much younger years, because the need for people is so great. Normally when somebody comes to you for a reading, they're not sitting in front of you because they're the happiest person in the world. They've usually got some type of worry or stress or concern. And so it's just to be able to be humble in that and to honor that trust. But yeah, a lot of the time they would lead me when I was very, very young, because I was trying to be nice. I didn't want, to say, oh, they're going to breakup or this, or, what have you, whatever it is that I was seeing. That only happened a couple of times. And then I started to go, okay, no, I'm here for a reason. I have to be authentic to the message that's coming through. And I have to deliver it in the way in which they can absorb. Yeah. So I've never actually been led that far that it's gone away from the truth of what the message was coming through. No.
Okay. So demystifying a few terms for me now. So we've got clairvoyant, clairsentient, clairaudient, and is there another one?
There's claircognizant. So it's all the clairs. So clair obviously means clear.
Okay.
And so clairvoyant means clear vision. And that's what I have. So I see. So spirit will give me, pictures, or sometimes it's like watching somebody's movie, which is great. And then there's clairaudient. So it's clear hearing. So you'll hear, like, they'll play me music, or I'll hear names, or hear the message come through, in an auditory way. Clairsentient, so it's clear feeling. You'll get like this combination. So it's almost like being in surround sound, but you'll actually be feeling things as well, and as well as watching the movie. But sometimes you'll taste things like cigarette smoke, or you'll get a feeling on the chest, depending upon what the client's going through or who you're connecting with. And that's that clairsentience, or a clear sense of like knowing almost, which is that claircognizance. So it's like knowing exactly. You know when you say, and that's it. People will be asking you a question, and they'll be like hoping for the yes answer, and you're just getting an absolute no. And then obviously you've got to deliver that message properly. But yeah.
So when you were in your early 20s, were the messages coming through in all 4 or 5 domains, or was it more auditory, and then as you've got older it's gone into a different realm?
I had to. So my mum's highly clairaudient, amazingly so. And so I'd be like, damn, because I was, very, very strongly clairvoyant. So I'd be seeing things a lot more. So I would have to say first, the clairvoyance was the thing that came through the most and the quickest, strongest. I had to work on my clairaudience, and it was more that clairsentience, that clear feeling as well that I had. So the seeing and the feeling was more strong for me.
Talk me through, are these, say with the audience, how vivid are each of these feelings or visions or auditory hearings? How vivid are they? Does it vary, or is it just like you're in an orchestra pit and your music's pounding in your ears and it's that sort of level of taking over, or is it quite subtle?
Extremely subtle sometimes, which is why when I was talking about really grounding your physical body before you actually do a reading, it's to calm it, because you're almost listening for or feeling out for something that's very, very subtle sometimes. So sometimes it can be a whisper that sort of comes through. Sometimes it's like having a conversation with somebody like you and I. So it's that level. There have been times where it's been a shout, so it just depends, but it's very much attuning your energy to the subtleties of what's going on around you. With my visual stuff, it's much stronger, it's like full resolution. Yeah.
What is going on behind the scenes then?
It's a really good question, and it's something that I've thought about obviously for many, many years. It's purely subjective, my answer, and I'm never going to know completely until I cross over and I go to that realm. I feel it's like it's connecting with something that is much, much greater than you. There is an energy that pulsates throughout the universe. There is an energy that pulsates within the earth. People call it their creator, people call it God, people call it many, many different names. I'm not entirely sure, but it is a place that is, and coming from a place that is pure of intention, it is pure of heart, it is for that person's absolute best. That's what I truly believe. And so we can talk about, all of these, different dimensions and everything. But to me, I bypass all of that and I just want to go to source. And that source is just the source of absolute love, absolute light. And I I give myself over to that in order to be a conduit of whatever messages they want to give to me. I know it's not maybe the answer, like it's not a scientific answer, it's not and anything, it's just, you know, and people can say, oh, well, you can be connecting to anything then, like what is truly, you know, behind all of that. But I know the difference when it's like when I'm connecting purely with spirit and when there's ego involved or I'm overthinking it. And that's one of the things as well. Like I'm one of those animals, I guess, to a degree that's I'm going off my senses, right? So we don't sit there and just say, well, how come a wolf can sense this or how come cats can feel this or what have you? It's just the level of frequency that we sort of, you know, connected to. So maybe my level of frequency is slightly different to everybody's sort of, you know, other people that, not everybody, but other people that are walking around. Yeah, it's a difficult one to answer, to be honest.
It absolutely is.
Really.
So I get the bigger question is impossible to answer, and you've answered it honestly, and that's all you can do really. Does it scare you much?
No, no. It's like, and again, I don't want to come off as wifty-wafty. I'm a pretty practical person, strangely enough, beyond all of this. But it's like going home. It's just like going home. It's like being wrapped in the arms of something that is so profound. So, no, it doesn't scare me. Other things do, but that doesn't, no.
So you've used the word spirit a couple of times, and I think other people I've had on here have also used it. When you say spirit, you use it singularly or in the singular.
Very good. Yes.
What do you mean when you say spirit? Spirit says, spirit does, etc.
So that is what again, when I'm reading or just in terms of, you know, my life or my lifestyle, it is a higher being or again, creator. And it's not, I don't believe that there was a person, I don't personally believe that there was a person in the sky and they made all of these, you know, trees and I'll put the tree there and blah, blah, blah. That's me. You know, obviously I like to take science into account and everything, but there's something in terms of the energy that is connected with the universe that is, it's much greater than what can possibly comprehend, and that's what I'm connecting to. It's almost like this all-knowing energy. That's the only way that I can describe it.
So when spirit is talking to you, showing you things, making you feel things, is it doing such as a higher being, or is it sometimes, you know, when you see these readings and it's, oh, your grandmother's with me and it's your grandmother that's saying things? Is spirit at that point embodying someone else, or is spirit telling you things about the person that's passed, explain that to me a little bit. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I will get messages from the energy that I would call spirit, which is that highest source of energy. And then I can also, and I've had, you know, experience in connecting with individual people who have crossed over. So when I'm talking to grandma, I'm actually talking to grandma. Right. So that's, and, you know, people can say, well, how the hell does that work? And, you know, I went through during one reading, I went through with a boy that had crossed over and, you know, he was really fascinated with all of this stuff when he was living. And he was saying, you know, I started here when I passed over, and then it's almost like there's all these layers, and then it just goes to a point where it's just pure white light. It's peace, it's quiet. But that's the evolution of the soul or the spirit. But I could still talk to him about it, even though he was on that journey. It's the most bizarre, unusual, interesting thing to kind of witness and connect with a person who's passed away, absolutely, who's lived this life and they've crossed over, and also be able to hear individual messages coming through from spirit as well.
And
Does that make sense? Does that make sense to you?
I'm going to have to watch this many times over to make a lot of sense of so much of this. The evolution of the spirit was something that's quite interesting, because I think I've read in one of your articles, or someone has interviewed you and you were speaking to someone at quite an in-depth level about the different the evolution of the spirit. So part of me wants to think that if this is happening, once the spirit gets to a certain level, do they just disappear and then you won't hear from them again and they're off doing other things? And the people that you
Sometimes.
are, let's say, channeling, the
Mhm.
people that you are able to speak to, grandma, for example,
Mhm, mhm.
she's in a certain phase and that's why you're able to talk to them. But then if the evolution gets
Mm.
to a certain point, they don't need to talk to people that are living anymore,
Yeah.
and then they just go off and do something completely different.
Yes.
How
Yes. I
how do
would
you
say
sort of
that.
process it
I
in your head of like, oh, maybe these things are happening and this is why these people are saying things to me?
Yeah, I can talk to and connect with somebody who has passed over, and we can talk about their life. Or, and sometimes even, and I know this sounds strange, but like I've connected with spirits or souls that have passed over maybe a couple of 100 years ago, and then you sort of think, oh well, like, well, how am I still able to connect with you and talk to you if, all of these things. Sometimes there's like a residual energy of a person that we can connect with. And I know this sounds crazy, but at the same time, their spirit is able to continue on that journey. Absolutely, yes, I would say at times though, there will come a point that people won't need to communicate anymore. It's almost like all of that being of being in this world or what have you has fallen away, and they're just light, and that's all fallen away. So again, there are no definite straight and hard answers to what I do from my perspective, if I'm being completely honest with you, because every case is individual. It's not like, oh, you cross through, 4 gates and then you're free. It's not Monopoly, right?
Mm.
So yeah, that's how it feels to me.
And with that conversation, if we go back to that evolution of the spirit, I appreciate there won't be like hard and fast. You get to level 3 and you're done.
Yeah.
But were there like distinct phases that you feel there'll be like a new spirit and a number of phases that an entity or spirit will go through in their evolution?
Well, it's the first is coming to terms with the actual physical passing. That's coming to terms with that. The second is progressing, I guess, beyond the physical plane of needing to check in all the time and, revisit maybe places or what have you, even on an energetic level that were important to them in this lifetime. People talk about spirits getting stuck or trapped or earthbound or what have you because they're just going round, they're just doing the loop round and round and round. There will come that point when once they progress beyond that, they're kind of free to maybe explore things that maybe they didn't achieve in their lifetime, really start to go more into the potential of what their spirit or their soul, really, really desired or wanted. And it's interesting because there was one lady that I connected with who was lovely, but she always wanted to be a violinist and she was stuck doing something like accounting or what have you in this lifetime. And then, she was showing me that her version of heaven was playing violin. So she would go to all these, and I know it sounds crazy, that she showed me that she was going to all these different places playing violin, but in the spiritual realm almost. I've seen, people like their versions of heaven. For some people it's driving cars, or for some people it's, fishing. Then they kind of get to explore and the soul is able to kind of play more, I guess. And
There's got to
then
be
they,
so many frustrated accountants on earth right now.
right?
I'm sure it's heaven
So,
for some people, but
well, exactly. For some people, that's their thing. Like, that's their gig, which is fantastic. And we know when we meet one, right? So, yeah.
So do you believe these spirits get multiple goes on Earth? Are they reborn into the next generation?
Potentially skip generations. Yes. And then we come to the whole question of what is reincarnation, right? What is that? So there's some, philosophies that heavily believe in reincarnation and some that don't. So again, if there's the evolution of the soul and the soul gets to a certain point where everything falls away, then how do they get reborn? Right? So there's all these questions. I have seen firsthand people talking to me about their past life with absolute certainty. Names, places, where it was. So
To
I
clarify,
also,
these are living people
yeah,
telling about past lives rather than okay.
yeah, living people. Talking
And
about their past life.
they haven't needed a third party to find that out about themselves. they've known that
known it,
intuitively themselves.
known it. And one of them, and I again, but one of them being my daughter, would talk about her father and would talk about her other mother and where it was and, you know, what part of Italy it was and what they did and what they grew on the farm. Like, I mean, it was just sitting there just going, wow. So yeah, that's a memory. That's a genuine memory. There's no need for them to make that up. So you know, reincarnation, I don't know where it sorts into everything, but obviously I've seen firsthand and obviously from other things and reading books, and especially with children a lot of the time, because the memory of that past life is fresh, it's recent, you know. Sometimes I wonder, is it, you know, do we have like such a passion or an interest in one particular thing because it's like a throwback to another lifetime?
A really important question now. Pets.
Yes.
Do you believe humans are humans and we are different and spirit can come into a human and it works like that? Or do you think it could potentially come into any other animal on Earth? Are we special in any way?
Well, we're talking about souls, right?
Mm.
So to me, an animal has a soul. So why I think we kind of are animals as well, you know, like yes, we're humans, but you know, we're part of this whole thing in the world. So yeah, no, absolutely. I think animals have souls. I think animals, yeah, could come back
And we can cross over. So you could come back as,
like
well,
a tiger or something.
I don't know.
Potentially.
Yeah.
Potentially.
Where
It's a
does
great question.
Where does Lunar Tiger come from? Since as you've mentioned, tiger.
So I was born in the year of the tiger, and I've got tiger rising in Chinese astrology. I've always felt an affinity to the animal, and lunar is because it's a big long thing about my astrological chart with the moon being right up the top. But I've always loved the moon phases, moon cycles. So it's just a combination of the two. I just love the fact that, and they're, you know, they like to hunt alone. So I'm a bit of a loner as well. So, yeah.
Now, going back to your readings, do you find it easier or harder to do a reading for a relative or a close friend? Is there a difference?
Absolutely.
Or is it exactly the same as doing it for a stranger?
No, it's completely different, because when I'm doing it for a stranger, it is when your heart is involved, it's hard to read your own book, right? So when your heart is involved in you know, the best possible outcome for this person, and you know that person inside out, and you know what the best possible outcome would be for that particular individual, it can be quite hard not to be led. So I like to know absolutely nothing about the client before I sit down in front of them. They're the best readings for me.
Really? Have you ever surprised yourself with? Is it ever surprising when you get to a level and you get the reaction from the person in front of you?
It's always surprising. Every reading's surprising. It's so much fun. I just have the best fun doing it. And it's not just, you know, that I don't have to have fun, but it's just like I'm so into it. I'm so passionate about my work. I thoroughly enjoy just seeing what's coming through for a particular person. So it's always surprising that sometimes it's like, wow, that was big. That message was big. So, yeah.
Have you ever, I don't know if it's lucky or unlucky, but it sounds really stupid to say out loud. Have you ever solved a crime or answered a massive family mystery with what you've been told?
So, here we go. This is a little bit about Deb behind the scenes. I love watching crime dramas. Like, I love true crime, because it helps me kind of test to see if what I saw at the beginning, if it turns out at the end, you know. So that's my part. That's one of my regular pastimes. I do really enjoy doing that. I've never solved a crime in terms of gone to the police with this information and said, this is what's come through. No, my mother's done that. She didn't solve the crime, but she gave the police what came through for her, which was very accurate. Family stuff, I connected with my grandfather, who I never met. He passed away when he was 42, and there was some really incredible, deeply personal stuff that came through for my father. I was reading for my father, and then his dad came through, and it really put to rest a lot of stress and kind of almost like trauma that my dad had carried for so many years, just through being able to connect with his dad. Yeah, that was really lovely.
So going back to watching the crime shows, I mean that is amazing. Within your own family, that's astounding. I mean, how nice to do that for your dad.
It was really humbling, and yeah, it was really humbling. And obviously, like, connecting with a man that I'd never met as well.
And if you went at 42, potentially your dad didn't know him as well as he could have done as well.
Exactly. He passed away. My dad, I think, was 21. So yeah. Yeah.
And with the crime shows, so you'll watch the start of a true crime thing, and then how do you?
And then I'll just say, like, I'll say to myself, oh, like, no, it's this person, or it's the guy down the road, or the brother, or like, I'll hear all these things, and sometimes I'll jot things down, and then I'll just see what happens in the end, like, see who they caught, just because I'm a nerd.
And how often do you get it? Do you think you've got an intuition about what's going on? Is it the way that the shows are being portrayed? Yeah.
No, you'll
How can you sit down and enjoy it? You can't enjoy it, can you? If you're constantly being interrupted with here's a vision.
But it's like a, how do I describe it? Like when you're on the train and, when you see that, like, you get that, like, your vision's kind of interrupted like that, when you're looking out or what have you, and you're sitting on the train. It's like that. So it's just little bursts that come in. It's not like I'm watching the crime drama and then I'm watching something for half an hour. So yeah,
you can't go to the cinema, surely. I mean, Murder on the Orient Express, probably a bad example actually. But if you're getting flashes of who did it, does it happen with? And how much detail can you go in? I don't want you to divulge any fact of the case or anything like that if you probably can't. But with your mother's example, what did she hear something?
Yeah, she got the names of, which was, I think, like one letter out from what their actual names were. So she'd written down the names of these people. She'd knew that they were brothers, that there were brothers involved. She knew how this particular individual crossed paths with these people. Yeah, and their backgrounds as well, like the people who were, what they'd done, what their backgrounds were.
This is back in Australia?
Yeah.
And how seriously was she taken when you turn up to a police station and say, hi guys, I've got some info? Oh yeah, go on, what is it?
I think it was such a shocking crime that I think the police were sort of quite open to, they needed to catch these people. Yeah. So they were quite open actually with her. I think she'd done it like one or two times, but there was one, because I remember walking past the doorway, and she was sitting at the table, and obviously stuff was coming through, and I was just like, oh, like, what's going on there? I remember it very, very clearly. So yeah, the police were actually quite receptive.
And do you ever get messages through where you can't connect the dots and you don't know what's going on with it?
Yeah, and you've just got to be open and honest and just say, this is what I'm feeling. It may not make any sense at this period of time. Maybe give it a few months, and like sometimes 2 years later, people will come to me and they'll say, didn't know what you were banging on about, had no idea whatsoever. Really, I was wanting to know about this, and this is what you kept talking about. And that's because that was the thing that sort of took over it. Is the message that they needed to hear. It became a dominant part of their life. But I've just got to be open and honest with what comes through. So.
And is that a prominent part of what you do? It's not just you're delivering a message, it's the person is receptive to receiving the message as well.
Oh, for sure.
It's like you're playing, it's like a game of two halves. You're delivering some stuff, but if they're either not ready to hear it or just not open to it, do people get aggressively upset sometimes, and they're just like, well, no, that's not true, and they just can't take that message at that time?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Is that tough for you?
Well, it happened a lot more when I was younger. So I'm almost 50 now, so I can kind of handle myself a lot more, right? But when I was younger, I'm just a young woman sitting at a table, and they're like, who the hell are you? I had people throwing my cards at me, people yelling, people having to get removed. Not often, but sometimes, yeah, for sure. And that's just because they just weren't getting what they'd obviously gone there for. So, and it wasn't because what I was doing was bad or the job was badly done or poorly done. It was just as much as they try and word the question, I kept coming back with the same answer. So 20 questions in, trying 20 versions of the same question, they get a bit antsy maybe.
Are there evil spirits? You have evil people on Earth? Are there evil things that are just, because you say the source seems to
Is
be
love.
good?
Yes.
Is there an evil element to, have you seen things, have you spoken to things that you're just like, that's not good?
Yeah. So I've lived in places where there's been highly disruptive energy. There, again, we're going into that territory of kind of entities or, portals and all of that type of stuff. So yeah, there is absolutely bad energy, and that's why you've got to be so careful, like especially if you're dealing with the spiritual realm. Like, it's not done for control. It's not, I mean, you could just be opening yourself up to anything then. But yeah, I've witnessed again myself things that are just bad energy, bad. Yeah.
Can you go into any more details on this, or is it just not appropriate?
Like things that aren't actually human. So spiritual entities that actually aren't human. Yes, I've seen those quite clearly. I've seen things
And what are
attached
you
to
seeing?
people.
So
Yeah.
sorry, just on that one. When you say you've seen them quite clearly, what have you seen? What would you describe?
Like there was one particular time when there was something standing in the corner of the room that was, very, very tall. Like they call them shadow men. So it's very, very tall, but like a shadow figure. Shadow figures are something that you don't want to be seeing. It's not a good energy. It's not, again, because I'm necessarily a bad person or what have you. It could be, the energy of the space that I'm in. It could be, people within that space could have been, messing about with things that they don't know a lot about in terms of the spiritual realm. So sometimes mucking around with things spiritually can open up channels or avenues or portals for, little round things that look like toads. But it's malevolent. It's disruptive, malevolent,
And that,
chaotic
and
spirits.
is that in the middle of a reading? These
No,
things will
no,
come out.
no,
No,
no.
you just go about your life, and is it like
Yeah,
out the
that's
corner of
like,
your eye? Is it
like
like in your peripheral vision? You sense these things?
that's like, being in particular places that I've visited, or like, specific, you move into a home and there's something going on within the home, and then it's just like, well, that needs to be sorted out. Sometimes attached to certain people, you'll see something kind of standing behind them, and you know that that person's not right. Like there's a malevolent energy within that person, within that individual. So you'll see like almost like that energy stepped behind them, standing behind them or talking through them. But that's not something that I would regularly, if at all, see within a reading, because I'm very specific about blocking any of that type of energy to come in. But
How do you
yeah,
process that when you're just walking through your life as you do? You come into contact with different people for different reasons, and someone's got something on their shoulder, as it were.
it's
Do you give them the
usually,
benefit of the doubt, or are you just like, oh, I know, I've got a
well,
feeling about you?
it's again, it's that animal instinct, I guess, to a certain degree. So you would just avoid it. You can't be in its presence. And we know that we've seen certain people, and again, whether it's on the tube or whether it's, going about our daily life, and you're like, oh, bad vibes. Like there's something not right. I can't actually physically be within that person's space. So I try not to kind of hang out with people who have that type of energy attached to them, just because I'm sensitive to it. Yeah, super sensitive to it. But I can still live my life and go about my daily things, but I don't want to hang out and have tea with it.
Buying a house for you must be a nightmare. You're moving house. You're like, let me just do a full sweep. Let me look in the basement. What's up there? There's nothing. There's no weird little toad creature hiding in the corner.
I know, right? I know. Yes, it is. It's got to feel right. The land's got to feel right. Everything's got to,
And you
because
live
there's
in
a
England
land.
now.
No,
Surely it's.
amazing. I know. There's a lot of history here.
Mm.
A lot of history.
So let's go into the what's the word? Not medium. The different methods that you use. So I've seen on your website you've got palmistry, you've got tarot. It was the things with angel cards.
Angel
So what
cards or animal oracle cards.
are
Yep.
these all just? Is vessel the wrong word? Are these all just ways
Tools.
that you can tools that you
Yeah.
can? Is it to open up the other person? Is it to open up yourself? Is it a
Both.
creative thing?
Yeah, it's what resonates with me, right? So
Mm.
with my mom, say for instance, she was like the tarot queen, right? So tarot was her thing, and that kind of helped open that up for her. For me, it's astrology, and I love the tarot now as well. I've got a bit of a love affair with it, but I've been to people who've cast like bones, or read leaves and tea leaves we were talking about before. It's just, it is like the vessel in which you can kind of connect to somebody's energy, and see, I guess, messages or visions or what have you through that. So, yeah, I mean, I don't need them, but I like to have them because it's just my way of kind of settling into the reading as well. And, sometimes, especially like with the tarot, it's this telling of a story. The story weaves through the tarot. It's so beautiful. And so
What's the history of tarot cards? How did they come about? Was it like an early game that turned into something else, or did someone
there's a
at
lot
one
of
point invent them?
mythology. Yeah, well, there's a lot of mythology that is attached to the tarot. So we've got numerology attached to the tarot. We've got astrology. So it's full of astrological symbols, and it's got mythology, like, say, in terms of like with the Empress card, we've got the mythology of, like we've got pomegranates, which represent bounty and fertility. We've got the symbol of Venus, which again relates to that feminine reproductive cycle. So, there's this story, again, mythologies that sort of go into the particular tarot card. So it's not just one thing. And then, obviously, there's the colors if you're reading the Rider-Waite deck, which is the original tarot. You can look at the colors, like even down to the colors. Energy represents, water in astrology. So it's always good to have like a basis of knowledge to do with astrology or numerology as well, because it adds more sort of flavor to what the tarot is. It wasn't so much a game, but it was just almost a way of, divination that we could put down, uh, you know, again, the mythology of old into a visual element. But yeah, they're beautiful. But it's the same like with astrology as well. We've got all of the mythology, like say with Jupiter or with Pluto, that represents, Hades and sort of going down to the underworld. And so, oftentimes when somebody's going through particular transits or what have you, they will use language that will be sort of, indicative or related to specific transits that they're going through. So Pluto transits can be quite heavy or intense at times because, again, it does represent that sort of the journey into the underworld and then coming out the other side. Yeah,
And
so there's lots of layers.
and did you say your was it grandmother or great grandmother used just playing cards?
Yeah, yeah,
Just as in a 52 card deck,
yeah,
couple of
yeah.
jokers, that sort
King
of
of
thing. And
Diamonds. Yeah, yeah,
yeah, and that was
yeah.
sufficient. So what do you do? You've got a deck, and do you give it to the person? They shuffle them, and then you deal them out, or how do you prefer
So
to do it?
because I'm doing online readings,
Mm.
I obviously shuffle the tarot deck myself, and then I'll concentrate and think on the person. I'll get their chart up in front of me, and then I'll just connect with their energy, and then I will choose the deck. I'll break the deck into 3, and then choose a deck that resonates with me best for them. And then we'll put it all out. If the person's sitting in front of me, then clearly they shuffle their own cards, and then I'll ask them to break the deck into 3, which is always cool to watch, to see how people shuffle the cards as well.
And is 3 like past, present, future, or what's
So
the?
what I do, because I would be there for a long period of time, just for me, because I'm doing a combination reading. So I will get them to break the deck into 3 smaller decks, and then I'll get them to choose one of those decks. So then maybe they'll have like 21 cards or what have you, and then we'll take the tarot reading off that. But the tarot is something that we sort of come to last, because obviously I don't want to get led by the tarot as well. So I just want to see what they give me in terms of, psychic ability, and then we move on to the tarot.
How has life for a psychic changed with the advent of the internet and online readings? Because when you would have started, it wouldn't have been as much of a thing.
It was
And then
telephone, maybe.
Telephone as well.
Telephone readings, but and then it, obviously face to face. So, but now
And is it
we've got this.
Do you find it any harder to do it via the phone? Surely,
No.
I don't know, is visual easier than over the phone?
Do you know what? I had this wonderful client who called me for many years from Russia. So they never gave me their first name, and it was just a telephone conversation, and they barely spoke. So it doesn't really matter if I see the person. I do email readings as well, so I'll just sit with the energy and then go with that. So I don't actually need like the physical. I don't need to see you in order to get what they're giving me. So, but
do you ever have a dud one where just nothing shows up and nothing happens?
Sure.
Pretty much I owe you a refund. This is I'm so sorry.
For sure. And that will be
what's going on there?
Oftentimes, if I'm truly honest, it's when I'm in a position in my life where Spirit is just going, not today. You're gonna go off and have a cup of tea and sit down. Because I'm human and life does take over sometimes, and that's most of if anything like that was to ever happen, which is very, very rare, it's usually me versus them, right? So in terms of the client, it's usually me. But very, very rarely does that happen. And sometimes maybe I'm just not the right messenger for what they need to hear, and you've just got to be humble enough. And again, I'm not going to sit there and sort of give somebody a whole heap of gobbledygook just to save face. It's just, if I can't see something, I can't make myself see it. The Spirit just shuts it down, and that's it.
And knowing what you feel you know about the world, how has it impacted your life and how you've led it? Have you been, because it's almost like having a babysitter or someone over your shoulder watching you constantly. How can you do anything naughty or immoral or anything? You're like, I'm being watched constantly. There's no such thing as being alone.
Which is great, right? Which is great.
Nice.
Yeah. But I'm still human, and I'm still gonna fuck up, right? So I'm some days I'm gonna fuck up, and that's part of it. And it's just like, well, Spirit will be like, all right, I'm just gonna let you sort that one out yourself, because it's not the all-seeing eye that I don't suffer, or I don't, make a mistake, or I don't get into a situation that is probably not the best for me. I've still got to learn how to be a human as well and live a human life. So
does it take its toll on your mental health?
Sometimes, because the need is so great, and of people, and the vulnerability is so great, it's sometimes you're just like, oh, like, how am I going to give them this message that's coming through? Like, that in and of itself can be tricky at times, and I still do, and I find a way. But there are other things that I've seen or had people sit in front of me with. Sometimes their life, wow, life's dealt them some really hard blows, and that coming away from a reading like that, it does take a while to kind of get it out of your system. Man's inhumanity to man can be quite a blow sometimes. Yeah.
Absolutely. I was watching, or in the sort of research, as it were, for this interview, I've watched a few like near-death experiences and a few skeptics and what they've gone through, and it echoes with what you said about the homecoming. Did you say that earlier? That it's like you've gone home, and I'm always curious the description of the near-death experience and what the other world is like. And then they're like, oh no, you're going back there, and it's almost a reluctance and a fighting it, and I don't want to. You think when someone gets over to the other side, why would you bother coming back? What's in it for you if you've gone over? They seem like this other space is amazing in many different ways.
which you'll be going back to anyway, right? But
Mm,
I think again it's that whole human journey. Like maybe there's something here that you have yet to do. There's a person here who you've yet to meet. Your story wasn't finished then, right?
mm,
It's, either getting the word out or becoming a better person or, falling into another industry or what have you, where you can touch the lives of, many different people. Sometimes that's why you're going back, right? You're not done.
and going back to your idea of a good life and being that role model for the little people that can look up to you and be the best that you can be, how do you think it's effective how you've made decisions in your life, knowing what you know, having the gifts that you have? How has it affected how you've chosen to live your life?
I think it's being able to look at yourself in the mirror. Really look at yourself deep in the eyes and say, I've done my absolute best. Maybe that didn't go the way that I wanted it to. Maybe this I could have done better, but I've done my absolute, absolute best. And I've been as truthful and honest and tried to understand myself as much as humanly possible in my role or, ramifications of my actions or what have you. I think living a good life is again, it's not about having the biggest toys. It's about finding the purpose of why you're put here and not being a chicken shit in terms of like trying to step out and reach your potential as a human being, not hiding. Sometimes putting yourself out there is terrifying, but again, I can't ask these little people or these other people to, go out and grab life with both hands if I'm not doing it myself. I can't. So that's, to me, is having a good life is maybe not having an easy life at times. It's not all about being happy. It's about being authentic.
I don't know if I'll keep this in the actual podcast, but I recently did a live with Megan, and she's obsessed, or semi-obsessed as anyone gets, with an experience that I had when I was younger, and I was on drugs in Amsterdam, and I whited out. I was completely out of it, and then I had this weird homecoming sensation. And she's asked me many times, "Do you think you actually died in that thing?" I don't actually think I did. I think I was just really messed up. And I had this homecoming experience that is, I've seen it on other videos where it's like a midlife review, but I was pretty young. And it was just a life review, and I was getting these questions thrown at me, and like, do you like what you've become was the main one that I've walked away from it with. And what do you think this is? Is this what you're here for? Is it today? It was like a kick up the arse of like, you're potentially
Majorly.
not a very nice person. Maybe you're a bit sarcastic. You're sitting like, you're not doing what you're here to
Don't be a
do.
dick.
Wake up and yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. It's like,
Yeah.
you know me.
They say it to all of us, so
Yeah.
it's not just you.
And it's that feeling that you are here with a purpose to do something. And what is that something? Figuring out what that thing is while you're here. You're here to either experience something or go through something or evolve somehow. But if you do it unconsciously,
One would hope.
yeah.
Or living somebody else's life, right?
Mm,
God, what is it, that expression or that saying, it was only when I came to die that I realized I had not lived, right?
mm,
I don't want that to happen to me. I'd rather be kicked in the teeth a few times and know that I've truly lived and given it my all. Yeah, it's when you have that sort of homecoming experience, it's just, it's wonderful. It's all enveloping. It's incredible. But we've also been put here for a reason. It's not just to, fuck about and then go home, right? So
There's an element, a lazier person would just think, well, I know what's coming no matter what I do. So the pressure's off. I can fuck about because
fuck about and find out, right?
Is that an Aussie saying? Not here to fuck spiders.
Yeah.
I'm sure
yeah,
Spirit
yeah,
will
exactly.
say.
Oh my God, that's fantastic. I haven't heard that for ages. I love it.
But yeah, is there if you know there's this wonderful or inspiring, enveloping love situation that happens when you're going back to that no matter what. So where's the pressure to strive and do things? Does that make sense?
Because you
Does it
have
take
to
the
be
pressure off?
able
Because if
to.
you're an atheist, this is all you've got. You've got to go for it because when you're dead, you don't think there's anything.
Yeah.
But when you've got an inkling that there is more to it, are you? I don't know.
Am I more,
Is
are you more
is it?
inclined to? Maybe for some other people, but for me, it actually makes me want to. I mean, this is the only time that I'm going to be in this incarnation as Deb, like, yeah, so maybe I'll come back as somebody else, but I want to make sure that I've done everything humanly possible as Deb before I do, again, crossover or what have you. It makes me want to grab life more because it's something that's denied of so many people. I mean, I think it's like 2 people a second die, right? Every day ad infinitum. Life's such a precious thing and it's so fleeting. It's so fleeting. And maybe, it's when and even though, yes, I know that, well, I know in terms of me having my knowing that when I pass away, that maybe there's something, again, much greater and more profound than we can ever possibly imagine. But it's not maybe until you have those moments where death maybe does come knocking and, like maybe you won't live for the next year or what have you, you don't know, or those situations that maybe you start to go, I really need to grab life and I really need to make the most of it. I mean, the most intense meditations I guess I had was when I was strapped to a bed in a radiotherapy room, because it made me really contemplate, like, what do I want? What do I want from my life? How do I want this thing to look? Come the end of it, I want to be able to turn around and know that I did my best.
How did spirit come to you in those dark times? Because at that point you're not channeling for anyone else, presumably. It's you become very
Inshallah.
focused. Yeah.
Yeah, you have to.
What was there a difference? Were you seeing and hearing from spirit more or less, or what happens?
And they would show me things like them coming in behind and lifting me up from under my arms, lifting me to my feet. They would offer almost like a shoulder to cry on. Deeply profound experiences in terms of being able to manage my fear. Of, maybe this is it, maybe in 6 months I won't be here. Maybe when I wake up from this surgery, I won't have my leg. I said goodbye to my foot the night before. And, having spirit kind of sitting with you and just, again, surrendering to it. Surrendering to spirit is deeply, deeply humbling. And, yeah, deeply humbling.
So is there a what will be vibe about it?
Yeah.
Did you at any point think this is actually it? These are the messages that I'm getting, that maybe this is it and I need to start saying my goodbyes, that sort of thing? That's really crazy to...
It was, I mean, it's a deeply vulnerable place to put your body in the hands of surgeons, and I just asked them to have, them looking over the surgeon's shoulder, like, can you just, get me through this? One never knows with surgery if you're going to wake up on the other side of it. I didn't know how far the tumor had gone. It was 2 millimeters away from a nerve. I could have lost my leg. I was looking at amputation. That's what they were talking about. There were all these things. I'm so glad I've got 2 legs. But it's like, I'm so glad. I'm a terrible dancer, but I will dance for the rest of my life now. But it's like, like, it is that, que sera, sera, like, whatever will be, will be. But there's also that very human hope of just get me through this and I'll make it all good. Make it all better. Yeah.
Do you think that, like, fate-wise, is everything predestined and that might have been a challenge in this life that you had to face and go through? Do you think those things are set in stone and it would have happened, or the things do change? Does spirit have... because you're fortune telling in some scenarios and looking into people's futures, but are these always possible futures? This is what I can never quite wrap my head around with the tarot cards. They say you'll do one reading and that reading is valid for right here, right now. And then I've seen on your website that you don't want anyone to come back. Like 3 months is a good gap for things to play out, and then we can do it again, and then we'll see potentially what the next stage is. How do you... I don't know. I've not done a degree in philosophy, so I don't know what the proper word is, but the fatality of it all.
I believe that we are meant to meet certain people I believe that what is for you will not go by you. But at the same time, and again, this is where maybe it's deep, like really frustrating for you to kind of talk to me, because it's, I'm weighing up, I'm oscillating back and forth. But at the same time, I also strongly believe that we can maybe make our future better by making better decisions in the present, in this moment in time, maybe an educated decision. So, say for instance, like when I did have that health challenge, if I abused my body during the process of trying to get better, maybe it might not have turned out so well. I was really extremely mindful about my health and really, really serious about it. So, there could have been a radically different outcome had I have not made conscious decisions in the moment. But if I wasn't meant to go through it, I don't, then I wasn't meant to get through it. I did, and I'm glad, and I'm here, and I came
just
out
to be
the other
clear,
side.
out the woods now?
Yes, it's always going to be, it's a genetic thing, so it's always going to be something that could be triggered or what have you. It's just a very rare, unusual form of cancer, but for now, yeah, absolutely.
That is,
Yeah.
well, touch wood, and very glad to hear it as well.
Yeah.
That is really pulling you through the ringer of, like you say, were you put to sleep for the operation and thinking, when I wake up now, I might be a foot or a leg down from where I
I
stand
took a
now.
photo of my feet. I did my toenails the night before. I had a good long talk to my foot, and if I didn't see it the next day at the end of everything, then at least I gave it a proper goodbye. Yeah.
And how does that experience help you sit with other people who, because you must have people who they're not looking to talk to anyone else. They're in a dark place and purely there for themselves and looking for hope. How does that help you resonate with them better?
One, to be honored that they've trusted me, and two, that I've, pardon the pun, but I've walked a mile in their shoes, right? And so that brings this sense of camaraderie or empathy. And every journey that a particular person will take is individual to that person, but there are common themes that come up: fear and terror sometimes, or what have you, and I've got to be really mindful of that, and I've really got to hold that and not lead them further into it, right? I don't, do no harm. So
That's got to be a tightrope, walking that tightrope, especially with someone in such a vulnerable position. Like I say at the start, there's a hell of a lot of responsibility on your shoulders.
It's hugely. I think if you're doing it right, you'll notice the amount of responsibility that you have dealing with people's souls. They're coming to you in a vulnerable space. There was the most wonderful client of mine that we were diagnosed at the same time. We both, strangely enough, born on the same day, different year, but diagnosed at the same time. And I went back to work and then continued to kind of read for them. And I spoke to them, not so much a reading, but I spoke to them about 3 or 4 hours before they passed. Yeah, incredible. So humbling. But yeah, there's that deep empathy that, and there, but for the grace of God go I, right? So it's not lost on me.
Bar family members, have you ever spoken to someone in the living world and they've come back on the other side to pass on messages?
Yeah. It's great, huh?
Does that blow your mind, or is it like?
Well, energy is energy, so yeah, I can connect either side. But yeah, it does blow my mind. The whole thing blows my mind, and that's why I find it endlessly fascinating.
Do you think you'll do this for the rest of your life? Do you think you'll ever hang up your
My
tarot cards?
cards on me.
Yeah, retire them. They've done their work.
I think I'll always do it in some way, shape, or form. Yeah, until I can no longer do it. Yeah, I love it.
Have you ever heard of people losing the gift? Is that a thing, or you have it, you keep it forever?
My husband knows. I've had time, and again, very rarely, but twice, where I once before my mum was diagnosed with cancer, and it was it was right before, and I was like, God, I feel really off. It was a day of, and it was like they put a lid on my head, and I was walking around, and I felt like I normally feel like I end sort of around where the ceiling is, which sounds mental, but I felt like I ended where my head, and I was like, oh my God, like where is it gone? Like I feel normal. Like what the hell is this about? I think this is what normal feels like. I don't know what this feels like. And then there was another time when I was really stressed, really tired, really worn out after having twins, and Spirit put the lid back on again. Freaked me the hell out again. But it was those times that I needed, the first time I needed to be there for my mom as well as for myself, and the second time I needed to be there for me and my children, my family, so they shut it down.
And speaking of your mum, did I read somewhere that there was unfortunately a cancer, but did you sense that there was an unknown cancer as well?
I remember mum, like, she kept coughing all the time, and she was saying that, she was going for, to check out the cough and everything, and then they kept saying to me psychically, top and tail, top and tail. Anyway, yeah, so it turned out that she had bowel cancer.
And you
I
got told that?
urged her, I was insisting that she look at everything, not just the chest. Yeah. But,
That's incredible.
yeah.
So sorry to end on that.
No?
So apart from tonight's lottery numbers, what is the question you get asked more often than anything else?
Is it going to be okay? Or will I find love? Will I be loved? That's more than anything.
Really?
Yeah. Will I find love or will I be loved? It's so important
So
for us.
my geekiness trying to work this out. So if they're asking that question and they're speaking to grandma and not spirit, grandma wouldn't know that. Or you think they're in a place that they know more than they knew on Earth?
Yeah, because they kind of got like a bird's eye view in terms of what I've seen and what they've shown me. So yeah.
Okay.
But in terms of my readings, I will very, very, very much so be connected with spirit first and foremost. And then if people choose to step in, then I will engage them. But it's not like pure mediumship, which is connecting with a spirit and having that conversation, go back and forth. But even with mediumship, they're still able to give details of what the future holds.
And have you ever, in part of my research, I was reading how some mediums will effectively get taken over by spirit and they will literally talk through them rather than just passing on a message.
Yeah.
Is it trance medium, something like that?
Transmediumship. It's incredible.
Have you ever experienced that?
I've not. I've done transmediumship classes, and yes, to a certain degree, I felt something. But there is a gentleman called Tony Stockwell, who was like a mentor and one of the tutors at Arthur Findlay College, which is in Essex as well. And I witnessed one of his transmediumship demonstrations. And I mean, again, people would say you're crazy or what have you, but the whole audience was watching his face shift and move and turn into the face of somebody else. The voice changed. It was amazing. There was gasps. So yeah.
How long did that last for?
It was roughly around an hour. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And it was multiple people that were coming through. It wasn't just one particular spirit. He was bringing through and channeling multiple people, one after the other.
Okay. Well, Deborah, this has been fascinating. I will finish, if that's okay, with a quick fire round, which I will keep nice and quick for you so you can get on with your evening. But I'll say thank you at this stage, and I will give you a chance to add anything on that you want at the end.
Thank you.
But what podcast, book, or blog would you give someone if they wanted to live a good life?
In terms of spiritual spiritual realm. I mean, I listen to Deepak Chopra a lot. So there's, affirmations, or there's a whole series of them on Spotify that you can just sit and listen to, and they can take you through, like intention or what have you. I do love Deepak Chopra. I love doing Ho'oponopono. So there's which is like a Hawaiian. It's almost like a like a practice of reconciliation and forgiveness. So that's a wonderful thing to do as well, to help shift dynamics and energy. It's an atoning of sorts at times. So Ho'oponopono is one of my favorite things to do, and I do that
And that's a
daily.
practice. Is that a practice like Reiki or? Okay,
Yeah,
I've not
it's
heard of that one.
Hawaiian. Yeah, so it's wonderful, and there's been a lot of really positive studies that are done, like people who've been psychiatrists in, mental institutions doing Ho'oponopono over their records and what have you, and then seeing the rate of violent outbursts or what have you go down. So there's something to it. Yeah, there's many different channels and avenues. Stoicism is wonderful as well. So Stoic philosophers, even Seneca was talking about, he pities people who haven't experienced suffering. So, Marcus Aurelius, especially in terms of saying, that we don't have to have an opinion on something. There can be a power in not having an opinion and just kind of sitting back. So I do enjoy Stoic philosophers as well.
And you're reading. I'm obsessed with the Stoics. You're
Yes.
reading on the Stoics. Have you? Do you like the original texts, or are there modern interpretations
I do.
that have helped you gel with the concepts?
I do like the modern interpretations better, just because it's more easily digestible. Was it Marcus Aurelius? Where is it? There were Marcus Aurelius and the Meditations. So I've read that, but it's just a no BS approach to life. And
So is it the Ryan Holiday books that you've?
Yes, Ryan Holiday.
Who brought?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that it's just having that no BS approach to life, to not overcomplicate things, to not get in your own way. Life isn't all about, the attainment of happiness. It's like, again, it's the attainment of meaning. So yeah, I do very much enjoy listening to them, their words.
Oh, that was the genesis for this podcast. Actually, what's good for the hive is good for the bee. That's Marcus Aurelius
Exactly.
quote.
Yeah, Marcus Aurelius. Yeah, I thought that when I saw what the name was.
Very few people get that reference.
Oh, really? Oh no,
Yeah,
it's great. Yeah. So I was going to wear a bee necklace today, but I thought I won't do that. So because my name means Queen Bee. Yeah. Not because it's a big thing.
Fair enough. What was your biggest light bulb moment where you learned something about yourself?
Being born. I don't know. Becoming a mum, knowing what you're capable of, and then breaking through that, the whole cancer experience, near-death experiences, what have you. You find out a little bit or a lot at each time when life goes slightly awry or off kilter, and then you find out what you're capable of in terms of being able to write its course. Yeah. Being brave and, not just rolling over.
What keeps you up at night?
The future of the world, the planet, the future of mankind, that we're going to not learn from history. Those who don't know their history are condemned to repeat it. So that keeps me up at night.
Stuff. What has been
that
your
and
best?
the cat.
The cat just mucking around at night.
Yeah, howling.
What has been your best mistake?
Oh, wow. Cutting my own hair. Yeah, cutting my own hair. I kept doing it and it kept getting shorter and shorter. And then I thought, well, there are people that know how to do this, so I'll walk into a hair salon maybe. And my husband was there to be.
Oh, so
Best
not
mistake ever.
as facetious as I thought you would. No, right, okay.
Best mistake ever. Yeah.
Let me see.
He's a hairdresser.
I know. I should have said that. I've stalked you to that level that for some reason that came up on one of the things that I read that I knew. I didn't know that story, but I knew that he was a hairdresser.
Yeah.
Is he Aussie as well, or is he?
He's English.
Okay. So that's what's dragged you all the way this side of the world.
Yeah.
If someone wanted to take one step towards living a good life, what would you tell them to do first?
Be honest with yourself, ask questions, and wait for the answer to come.
It's not as easy as it sounds, is it?
No, it's not. But ask and you shall receive. And in time, the answer will come.
Brilliant, Deborah. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Just before we sign off, is there anything you wanted to leave the listeners with that we didn't get a chance to talk about?
No. Oh, there is one saying that I love. It's do not go gentle into that good night. Rage against the dying of the light. And that is by Dylan Thomas. And it's about not just going into death easily, in a grab life, make the most of it. Put yourself out of your comfort zone. Just be aware of what a beautiful, fleeting, powerful thing that courses through your veins. It's here for all of us. We can take it. Rage against the dying of the light. Yeah.
That's a brilliant sign off. Now, if anyone wants to follow you or get in touch with you, what is the best way on socials, etc., to find you?
So lunatiger.co. That's my website, and everything's there. And it'll lead you to everything, all socials, all everything. So lunatiger.co is also my Instagram handle. That so
that's amazing. Well, thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you. It's my absolute pleasure.
I'll put it all in the show notes and all that stuff downstairs as well.
Thank you. Lovely.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Bye.
Thanks for watching all the way to the end. Just before you jump off, please do give it a like. And if you're new around here, do subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one. Cheers.